Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'm going to show you how I made this really festive looking Christmas decoration.
So as usual I'm going to use completely scrap materials such as pallet wood, and for the base I've got a piece of veneered plywood there. Any wood will do. This is just what I had, and I routed the corner just to make it smooth around the edge. And you don't have to do this, but it just makes it look a bit neater. So when that was done I just cleaned it up and removed any bits from the surface. So now it was time to cut the 3 snowmen out of these pallet wood skids, and I made them all different heights to make it look a bit more interesting. And marked up with a speed square. So I then wanted to mark up some measurements for the hats. And I then cut them out on the miter saw. So now I wanted to make the brims of the hats out of some, again, scrap plywood, scrap pallet wood. And these would stick out slightly around the edge. As you can see there. So once I was happy with the arrangement, it was then time to get these hats attached, and for that I glued and screwed them on, just making sure that I got glue everywhere with a brush. So I then drilled through the tops and countersunk the screws so that they would go all the way through. So once they were all done, it was time to position them on the board so that I could make some marks ready to drill some holes to screw them onto the board. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing for more woodworking videos. I also do restoration projects and gardening too. So there I'm just drilling down through the board. And then I used a countersink on the back of the board so that the heads of the screws would sit flush underneath. So now it's time to get them attached, and I glued them and screwed them. And this was a little bit tricky, so I used a clamp here to keep everything in position while I screwed it. And it helps here to use an impact driver because it just squeezes everything together nicely. So now I needed to fill those countersunk holes, and I had some leftover little offcuts of dowel which just happened to be the exact fit. So I glued those and hammered them in, and you could just use a wood filler here. I then just took a tenon saw and cut off the excess. So now it's time to give it all a sanding down, and I used an 80 grit. And I just took my time going into all the awkward spots and cracks to make everything nice and smooth. And then just finished off using some sandpaper by hand, just so I could get into those awkward spots. So I just gave it all a brushing off. And then it was time for painting it, and for that I used some matte emulsion brilliant white paint, and I gave it 2 coats. And I think if you use matte, it looks a bit more like snow than silk emulsion. So then it was time, once the white paint was dry, it was time to paint the hats. And for this, I'm just using an acrylic paint, water-based again, and I'm doing black for the 2 sides and then a brown for the middle. So now that the hats were on, it was time to start on the faces. So I started off with a felt tip pen to draw out the eyes. And then I went over them with black paint. And then I took a pencil and it was time to draw on the noses, and for the noses I wanted to draw carrots. And then coal for the mouth, pieces of coal. And I alternated the directions of the carrot noses just to make it a little bit more interesting. And finished off those coal pieces with the black paint again. So then for the carrot noses, I mixed up some yellow and red paint to make like a nice dark orange paint, and then just carefully painted on the noses. And I left the paint nice and thick to give it a bit of texture. And there were the faces all done. So now it's just time to give them some scarves. And this was the only rag that I had at the time, a little bit colourful, but it doesn't really matter what you use. So I'll just cut some strips and I used some string just to tie them up so that they don't fray. You could use a sewing machine or sew them if you want to. And then once I had attached the scarves on, I used another piece of string there just to keep everything nice and tight to stop it coming off. And that was them all finished, so I think they look really cool in the end, really Christmassy. So yeah, if you found this video useful, please leave me a like and also consider subscribing for more videos. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time, and a very Merry Christmas.